First of all, I should start by saying that I consider myself very, very fortunate to have worked with Sir Seewoosagur Ramgoolam, and I've seen him in many positions, uh, in international meetings, amongst ministers, in discussion with officers like me. I was then, and uh, and I have also been able to hear what other people have been saying about him. Amongst his colleagues in African circles, I can say that they have a very deep respect for him, not only the old people, I mean the elderly statesmen, but also young diplomats. There was one who said to me, "Ton vieux là, il voit loin." Hein? Il me rappelle un dicton berbère. Le vieillard voit plus loin que le jeune homme debout. Le vieillard assis voit plus loin que le jeune homme debout. So this is what he said. Now, those critical years, what are those critical years? Those critical years were the years when Chacha achieved independence, and immediately he was faced with lots of problems. And here, thinking about the problems he faced and the answers he brought to those problems, I remember what what Toynbee said about history. He says history is a record of challenges and response. So for me, when I look at Chacha, I think the most challenging years were from 69 to 71, especially 1971. I'll come to that later. So when the country becomes independent, you all know at the time, the world was bipolar. We were right in the middle of a Cold War. And then, being a colony, the country had been dismembered by the British, and this was condemned, of course, by the UN. And then some countries, some big countries, had just become independent after 45. Though the world was bipolar, so those countries like India, China, or Indonesia did not want to be stuck on either side of the communist world or the free world, as they say, and they started the non-aligned movement in 1955 at Bandung. So Chacha had to be very careful. Though we were independent, we're still under the Western influence, British influence. And at the same time, he wanted to show that the country was free, was not at the beck and call of the States or of the UK. So what he did, despite discouragement, he was discouraged, was not the people told him that he should be recognizing China, but at the time he recognized China, which was a very daring act to do, which is why today, you know, the Chinese are such a grateful people. So until today, when we have problems, the Chinese government will always stand by our side. So this is one of the great decisions made by Chacha. Well, summing up the things that he did on the international level, I should say that he had the brilliant idea of going to General de Gaulle, to Senghor, to Mao. In fact, behind Mao, there was Chou En-lai, and then Mrs. Indira Gandhi. These are the four giants that were present, that he went to, and thanks to them, we are what we are today. We are in the position that we are today, a most fortunate position. So, this on the international level. Now the country was divided. 44% voted against independence. And then many people were leaving the country, either for the Canada, Britain, Australia, France. People were leaving the country. So the great challenge was economic survival. What did he have to do? You know, at the time, our revenue was dependent on sugar at 93%. So, but at the time, we had just signed the Commonwealth Sugar Agreement, which was to last until 1975. But when the British started looking at Europe and wanted to join Europe, de Gaulle said, no, you won't come in. First time, Second time also to Harold Wilson, said, no, you are not coming in, until much later. But while the British were looking at the EC, so they were taking precaution. They said to all the partners of the CSA, well, don't look beyond 1974, because after 74, the British are going to review their sugar agreement, so no way of extending this. So 1974, it's the ultimate deadline. But this can come much earlier. So for Chacha, the great thing to do was to find a market for our sugar, without which it's the end of Mauritius. So now I have to correct some wrong information we have about our joining the EC. Some people said it was the PMSD. It's not that. No, I have to correct it right now. From the very start, it was Chacha's idea that we should be joining Yaoundé from the very start. Because if you look at it, he met General de Gaulle on 21st of January 1969. And it was much later, about 10 months later, on the 1st of December, that the PMSD joined Labour to form the national government of unity, as we said. So he had to find a market. The country was divided. But when he went to see de Gaulle, what did he want to get? He knew he was in a very weak position. Your country is divided, what can you ask for? Chacha thought of having a cultural and economic agreement with France. Even if we did not have lots of assets, but there was one thing, two things that we had. First of all, the French language, and second, the proximity with radio. The French were scared about the Iranian people getting tempted to ask for autonomy too. So Chacha, I think he proposed to de Gaulle, he said we could have a sort of association with Madagascar and Réunion. But after discussions, what came out was de Gaulle went beyond. He thought of a Francophone economic association of Indian Ocean countries. So it was thanks to the French language that we got the sympathy of de Gaulle, and de Gaulle, not wanting the Réunion people to be tempted by independence, so decided to bring all the assistance that we needed from France. Now, on the 21st, he met de Gaulle, and then on the 29th of the same month, that is less than a week later, we hear that Chacha was going to Kinshasa. But 3 days earlier, he told the press that due to an earlier commitment, he was unable to go to Kinshasa. And then, on the day he was taking the plane, he was with the Malagasy president, Siran, and then he declared to the press that he had been invited by President Tombalbaye, and that the entry of Mauritius into the joining OCAM was almost a matter of course, no real problem about our joining. It's a bit surprising because I've been asking myself why between the 21st and the 29th, on the 26th he was a Jew, on the 28th he was leaving. He arrived there. Well, I'll come to that chapter a bit later. But something must have happened between 21st. So I've been wondering, we say, you know, at the time, even if you were independent, but especially in the 60s, I was thinking of the intervention, perhaps, of de Gaulle himself, perhaps calling Tombalbaye, he said, you know, get my friend there into your OCAM. I suspect that, but I cannot affirm this as a student of history. But something must have happened between 21st and 29th. Now, why I have those strange ideas is because, first of all, if a country is going to join an international organization, you have to do your homework. There's no homework. There was nothing done in Mauritius. There was no preparation, no papers about Mauritius joining. Now, when he arrived there, Mauritius joining OCAM, was not on the agenda. It wasn't there. Now, we don't know what happened, but in the meantime, well, of course, at such a summit, you don't have just one item about Mauritius. They don't really care about Mauritius. I think more important, there was war between Congo-Brazza and Congo-Kinshasa, and then the Central African Republic also was at war with Congo-Kinshasa. So they had those problems to solve first. And now, the meeting over, there is no announcement, no declaration that Mauritius had joined. This also is quite strange. No indication that Mauritius had been admitted. How do we know that, that Mauritius had been admitted into EUCAM? So when the Prime Minister left Kinshasa and arrived in London, he gave a press conference where he confirmed that Mauritius had been admitted, which is the official information that we have about Mauritius joining EUCAM. So this is quite strange. There must have been things going on in the background that we don't know about. I leave this to future historians to look into this. Now, a week later, after the meeting, President Sirhan arrives at the Élysée. He's received by General de Gaulle. And after his meeting with de Gaulle, he had a press conference at which he said, yes, Mauritius has been admitted. And he conveyed the thinking of de Gaulle on the new membership. He said, c'est une bonne chose que Maurice soit admise dans l'EUCAM. So this is how it happened. It means, you know, something happened. That is, and then when we read what went on between de Gaulle and Chacha, de Gaulle was very fatherly. You see, when I read about this, I was a bit uneasy because we are used to seeing Chacha as the father. But then, in the press at the time, he said that de Gaulle was very paternal vis-à-vis the Chacha. But when you look at the pictures taken of both of them at the Élysée, then you understand that indeed de Gaulle was the Chacha of our Chacha. Now, what he also asked when he met de Gaulle, he said, please allow 1,000 Mauritians each year to come to your country, but there was no response on this. But anyway, unfortunately, de Gaulle was voted out for the referendum, and what was agreed between them had to be reconfirmed by the successor government, that is the new President Pompidou. Now, of course, we have to remember that this joining of EUCAM is the greatest first step taken for the benefit, for the future of our country. If we have been enjoying those 30 years of prosperity, relative prosperity, with so much, with millions coming from our sugar sale, it starts with this day when we join EUCAM at Kinshasa. Never forget. This is the most important thing, and I'm convinced today that we would never have joined EUCAM were we not Francophones, were we not French speakers of French. I think we must always remember that it's thanks to the French language that we have survived until today. Now, of course, after that meeting, SSR had his press conference. He had invited de Gaulle to come, but as I told you, because of the event, de Gaulle could not come. So this is how the challenge of 1969, so we see it here. The challenge was to find a market, but he had opened the door. And then he also solved another problem. You know, this question of the country being divided between pro and against independence. You know, there were talks about Indian hegemony and this nonsense at the time. But country divided, but Chacha was able to take Gaëtan Duval, the leader of the opposition, with him to the UN on the 16th of September, the year 69. You see that challenge about the nation being divided, so he reconciled them, the nation, by bringing Gaëtan Duval with him. And this was such a big news, a big event, that the Secretary General of UN said to Chacha, you know, we have to learn from you how to bring harmony in the world. He said that at a dinner. And And so we see that Chacha indeed was a nation builder. And another aspect of Mauritian history which is not very well known, because he addressed the Chinese community, but this is another story. In short, I'll simply tell you that after the Chinese Communist Party gained power in 1949, subsequently they changed all their national laws, and all the Mauritians born in China or here became stateless. They had no nationality, and Chacha spoke to the Chinese community, asking them, well, take the nationality, be Mauritians, help us to build this country. So this is why we'll always be grateful to Chacha. You see, he had vision and all that. Now, so this question of national unity, he has proven by what he did to be a real nation builder. Now we come to the end of 1979, when the PMSD joined the Labour Party on the 1st of December and formed the new government. Now you have a political vacuum. And this is where, you know, young students who had been in France in May '68 returned to Mauritius and started asking for changes. They wanted to change the system. Well, this is quite normal for young people to want to change, because they have to prepare the world in which they will be living in the future, where we will not be there. So it's a good thing that they challenge us every day. It's a good thing. So, but those boys, those people who challenged Chacha, there were those young people who benefited from the arrangement made by Chacha when he obtained scholarships from the French. So many of them got the scholarships, went to France, studied, and they came back revolutionaries to challenge him. This is fantastic. I find this wonderful, yeah? But most of these young people don't know. Many of them don't know or don't care to know that they owed their scholarship to Chacha himself, even if they challenge him. Now 1970, we arrive in the beginning of 1970, and one man, this is very, very surprising. You know, sometimes we ask ourselves, well, in this harsh world of politics, why do poets get involved in this sort of world? You know, Malcolm de Chazal, he was a Labour candidate. Many people don't know that. It's incredible. And you hear that Malcolm de Chazal, our greatest poet, the greatest poet this country has produced, was a member of the Labour Party. He supported Chacha. And at the beginning, in January, he wrote 3 wonderful articles, because he had been following what Chacha had been doing on the international scene and in Mauritius. And he said that this country too small for Chacha, he should be at the head of a country like India. Which is true when you look at what Chacha did in this country. Really, I share the same feeling about. Now, Mauritius has been able to get the support of de Gaulle. Mauritius, now being a member of OCAM, has the support of the African countries to go into the EC. But there were other members of the European Economic Community that had nothing to do with Mauritius. You take the case of Germany, of Italy, of Luxembourg, for example, that had never been a colonizer of Mauritius. They had nothing to do with Mauritius. So why should they accept you as a member of EAMA? Why should they? Because if you're a member of EAMA, they have to provide funds for your development. So Chacha understood that he had to go to them and convince them that if you don't help us with our sugar, we'll have problems. So in February 1970, he went with a delegation, of course, with Sir Leclerc Tilak. He took Dissosier with him, Raymond Charles, we have a team. So he toured the European capitals, went to Brussels, Luxembourg, Bonn, again Paris and to Rome, trying to tell them you have to do something for us. But of course, these countries could not promise anything. They simply say that when the time comes, we'll consider your case with sympathy, which they did in the end. So this also was quite positive. In the meantime, the French-speaking countries got organized. They created l'Agence de coopération culturelle et technique, but this organization did not exist before. For us, all of us know that it exists today. It became the L'Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie, but that was a new thing that was developed. And here, once Gaëtan Duval joined SSR, now SSR told him, you have the roadmap, you look after Africa. It was then, not before. It was then. You have the roadmap, now you do this, follow this, look after Africa, I will look after Europe. So this was the arrangement they arrived at. Now, we arrive, yes, we're still in 1970. As I said, the students had started having discussions and talks across the country. They were getting restless. And it just happened at the middle of the year, on the 17th of July, the Secretary General of the MMM was arrested. Suresh Moba and Béranger were arrested. So this part of our history has often been misinterpreted, because we have only had one version of history. It looks as if Chacha Ramgoolam loved power, was in government, had power, and was not prepared to give it away to anybody. But what they forget to say is that while Chacha was in government, he had a vision for this country and he was doing things for this country. Whereas when you look at the declarations subsequently made by the Secretary General of the MMM on the 18th of August 1976 at the court in Cupip, he said, we wanted to grab power at all costs without going through elections. 18th August 1976, you can check the history, this is history. So, in presence of this, of a group of people determined to grab power, what should a man like Chacha, who is building the country, discussing with the EC, what should he do? He had to stop them. This is so obvious. He had to stop them. So this is what happens, especially now. Now, in 1971, the students, now 71 now, were getting more restless. There were demonstrations, etc. And at the same time, on the 12th of January 1971, there was this anti-Banda petition with demonstration in the street on the 12th of January. So for the whole month, at the time when Chacha should be concentrating on what was going on with the discussions about sugar, getting in place his strategy, what was he to do? So, and at the same time, in January, OCAM was meeting at Fort Lamy, the OCAM African countries. And a most important thing about this meeting in Fort Lamy, it was the first time, this is a very important date in our history, it was the first time that the African countries made a statement to the effect that we are going to back Mauritius on this question of sugar. Mauritian problems, Mauritian sugar is our sugar. This is the way they put it. We are going to be one with you. We are going to defend your interests. So it was a victory for. So while we are having this, now you have this demonstration against Banda. So as a responsible person, what would you do? You cannot allow this to go on. Now, once the African countries of OCAM had shown determination to help us, to be on our side, Chacha appointed a team to look after the sugar file at the EC. But I should perhaps remind you that at the time we didn't have an embassy in Brussels, no mission in Brussels. We were working from Paris. So Chacha appointed Sir Lecras Tilok, Raymond Charles, and Guy Seussier to look after the sugar file. Interesting. Raymond Charles was not an ambassador then. Sir Lecras Tilok was in London. Guy Seussier was to give technical advice. And here I'm so pleased to see our good friend Balakishna Padu, one of those guys working in the background in Paris and then in Brussels to help build this country, and people don't know him. He's a great guy. Yeah. So this team was appointed to look after the sugar file, and at the embassy we had to look after it. And so practically every week Raymond Charles had to go to Brussels. He was shuttling between those two capitals. Now, so the demonstrations were going on in Mauritius. Then in August, we have a sit-in Rose Hill. All the students, a sit-in. There was one guy, Philippe Forget was in the group, if I remember this now. And of course, on the 19th of August, MMM leaders were arrested. The dockers started their strike that was to last 40 days. The dockers started on the 7th of September. And this was going to paralyze this country. The strike spread to all the sectors of economic activity in the country. The country was paralyzed. At the time, there was nobody to take the bulk of goods coming into the country. There was nobody. And then at the time, I think the government had to have recourse to the special mobile force to unload all those the merchandise from the ships in the port. So on the 7th, the dockers started their strike, and this is very important. And 2 days later, and 2 days later, the PM was writing to the EEC. Just imagine this. You see, you have so many problems with you here now. You have to think about the future of the country and get your people organized. And then he was corresponding with the High Commissioner, with the Mauritian Embassy in Paris. And on the 9th, he was issuing that letter. But you don't just write a letter like this, so you have to be prepared. You don't want to write in it and not. So the background work was being done. So on the 9th of September, 2 days after that event, the strike started, he was writing to Aldo Moro. You must have heard about Aldo Moro, the Italian president, what was captured by the Italian terrorists and was murdered some 40 years ago. I think you heard about this, huh? You heard about this yeah. So he wrote to Aldo Moro, who was then the president of the EC Council. He said two things. We would like to join Yaoundé, and then we also want to be associated with the EC. Two letters, huh? Two things. Because joining the EC means only with Europeans. When you say Yaoundé Convention, it means indeed you want to be one of the EAMA countries benefiting from financial and other aid from the EC. So Aldo Moro, president of the EC Council, and then Malfatti, the president of the Commission. The EC Council is the government. The Commission, it's the administration. As if it's, yeah. So you have two bodies. It's good to know that. The president of the council comprising ministers of the EEC countries, and the commission is the administration at Bâtiment Charlemagne in Brussels, which is it is not political, it is, well, the British call them bureaucrats, but in fact they are the civil servants, the administration, or the secretariat in a way, but it's more than that. They call it the commission because they make laws, for the whole of the EC. So this is a bit complicated. I won't enter into this right away. But then on the 2 days after that thing, he wrote. And then on the 21st now, Sir Lecras Tilok in London too, he too had to write to Aldo Moro and to Malfatti. So the requests were made. And then you know all the events. The strike went on for 40 days and ended only mid-October. And then the situation was not normal. As you know, there was rivalry between the PMSD and MMM, and one guy, Azo Adelaide, was shot dead in Cupip on the 25th of November. So just to give you an idea of the local context in which Ramgoolam had to operate. He had to, on the one side, look after the local scene and then build the country internationally. Now, so a couple of days later, after Azo Adelaide was murdered, so the EC Council said, okay, for Mauritian application, it's all right. And then 5 days later, the African countries in EAMA also said it's okay. And then we had to wait. It was not over. We had to wait until December, 17th of December, where European Parliament, this is another institution of the EC, they also said it's okay. Now you can go ahead. And this was a time when we had a state of emergency in Mauritius, proclaimed, 16th of December, because of the events in this country. And 16 pro-MMM trade unions were suspended on the 26th of December. My comment here is, you read in the papers that those were the années de braise, there was democracy was trampled and all this sort of comments being made. But there's just one thing to remember. The European countries are democratic countries. Their leaders are democratic leaders. So if you had been violating human rights, there was no way that they would have accepted Mauritius joining. So what I'm trying to say is what has been presented about Chacha being undemocratic, all this is, I'm going to say a bad word, is not to be taken seriously. Okay? Now, so these three institutions, the Council, the Commission, and the Parliament, having agreed, discussions for Mauritius joining started on the 1st of March, 1972. And then we had, at the same time, soon after there was this visit by Queen Elizabeth. The Queen came to Mauritius, and the MMM called for a boycott, and this wasn't followed. Now, the most important thing for us, which is very little known, because I've heard some people in the press not knowing the details of this chapter of our history, they don't know that the association accord was signed on the 12th of May, 1972. And when this was signed, we joined the EAMA. Then Sir Seewoosagur in Paris met Pompidou. Now, you see, you have to go through all these procedures. Now that this has been signed, all the European Parliament had to approve. You see how democratic they are. Then in July, the 18 associated states had to sign an internal protocol allowing Mauritius to join the Coordination Council. On the 9th of October, for the first time, we were going to sit in the company of the EAMA people in the council. Here again, there has to be another protocol signed, and this is where the Prime Minister, our Prime Minister, went to Luxembourg on the 9th of October with a delegation that was accepted in observer capacity first to this Coordination Council. So Mauritius was admitted, and on the 9th, and then on the 11th, on the 10th, there was a meeting of the ambassadors of Mauritius and the African countries, to congratulate themselves, of course, about the success of all this. And then the Minister of External Affairs of Mauritius and African countries also met, and this is where we became full members of EAMA and of the EC on the 11th. Now, I remember on the 9th, there was this admission. On the 10th, there was the Ministers' Council. And then on the 10th now, not on the 11th, there was this Ministers' Council. On the 10th, I got prepared to go to the meeting, Luxembourg. So Chacha said to me, "Hey, Pabzalito, finalement." So then I was with him in the car. I was paternal, he was fatherly. He said, "Joseph, vous connaissez maintenant, au fin de Bruxelles, so, hein? Vous besoin travailler." Oui, Chacha, oui. And then, in fact, there was something that had happened, but this is not history, but there's a side story which I let you know. The wife of Sir Harold Walter had came to Paris about a month earlier, and I was supposed to go and welcome her. But something happened, I didn't see her, so I went back to the office, and then I suppose Sir Harold reported me to the old man. So what he was telling me, he said, "Prends travail bien au sérieux maintenant." So this came back to my mind. I said, surely he is indirectly. So I said to him, "Well, you mean?" He said, "No, no, no." So I kept quiet, very quiet. And then we went downtown. He at the Place de Luxembourg, or the Place, the main square. So we stopped there. So I went with him. He was doing some shopping. He bought a tie and gave it to me. He felt that he had told me something which made me unhappy or sad or whatever. Well, this was the man, when he has told you something, he always, after saying something which unpleasant, he always covers this with something. So I love him the more for that. This is what I wanted to say. As you say, in conclusion, when he arrived on the scene, there were challenges, and this is how he tackled those challenges. And indeed, he was a man of vision. Thank you.